Chapter 3476. Mu Yan had no choice but to say, "In that case, I will treat the 3 elders first. But without finding the cause, even if they are cured, there is a certain chance that they will relapse." Yi Shuasong couldn't hear the rest of her words. He suddenly widened his eyes and looked at Mu Yan in disbelief. "Lord Jun, you're saying that you can cure these terminal illnesses?" Mu Yan smiled and nodded, "But the process of my treatment cannot be seen by outsiders. Alliance Master Yi and fellow Taoists of Luoyun League, please wait in the side hall for a while." After Yi Shuasong left, Mu Yan immediately hypnotized the 3 elders of Luoyun League with the Tian and Mo Qin. Then she turned to look at Chu Moli, 3rd senior brother. "What do you think is strange about their illnesses?" Chu Moli gently fiddled with the thumb ring on his hand and said with a smile that wasn't a smile, "Junior sister wants to ask me if their illnesses are related to the curse." "That's right." When Mu Yan heard Yi Shuasong's description of the 3 people's illnesses, the first thing she thought of was this mysterious curse. They got sick for no reason, and the cause couldn't be found out. It wasn't poison, nor was it a goo. Mysterious, strange, and frightening. When all of this was put together, this word immediately emerged in her mind. Curse. What curse? Luo Yu asked curiously. Chu Moli slightly raised his eyes to look at Mayan. His pitch-black pupils were deep and serene, as if they were connected to the bottomless abyss of hell. "Little junior sister, the curse is still not something that you should touch right now. Don't mention it, don't explore it, don't touch it. Otherwise, you will regret it." The remaining 5 people in the room kept quiet out of fear. Even their breathing seemed to have stopped. It was the first time they felt such an oppressive pressure from Chu Moli. Being stared at by those dark eyes, it was as if even their souls would be swallowed. Chu Moli warmly said, "Do you remember?" The 5 people nodded. Even Mu Yan was unreasonably well behaved. Chu Moli revealed a faint smile, and the oppressive feeling in the room instantly disappeared. He slightly raised his chin and pointed to the 3 people lying on the ground. "They aren't curse, or rather, they aren't curse, in the true sense. But it's also something very interesting. But its aura is too weak, so I can't be sure." Mu Yan slowly exhales, inwardly surprised. Whether it's Di Mingju, 9th Master, or Chu Moli, as long as the curse is mentioned, they will become incomparably serious. He even warned her again and again not to touch it. What exactly was curse? Why is even Di Mingju so afraid? What did 3rd brother's illness and his inability to stand have to do with the curse? 2 hours later. Yi Shuasong, who was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan, was summoned by the guards of Liberty City. When he rushed to the front hall and saw that he was still alive and well, he couldn't believe his eyes. These terminal illnesses that even Hikaizu, the immortal doctor, could do nothing about, were actually cured by this little girl. Yi Shuasong is shedding tears of gratitude as he deeply bows towards Mayan. "Lord Jun's medical skills are truly miraculous. Ah! Somebody, deliver the gifts that I've prepared for Liberty City." Mu Yan smiles and accepts Yi Shuasong's gift, without the slightest bit of embarrassment. Because she knows that if what Yi Shuasong said was true, this kind of strange illness would be prevalent in Luoyun League every year. Then the number of times that this alliance Master Yi would trouble her to treat him in the future might be even more. The Enchantress of Beauty Doctor, Heaven-defying baby, black-bellied dad, please collect it. The Enchantress of Beauty Doctor, Heaven-defying baby, black-bellied dad, please collect it. Chapter 3477. If the Luoyun Alliance could find the eldest brother for him, it would be tantamount to owing them a favor. Therefore, he had to treat their illness, but he also had to collect the consultation fee. Just at this moment, a paper crane flew in from the window. Yi Shuasong said excitedly, there must be news about your eldest brother, Lord Jun. Mu Yan and the others were all shocked and quickly gathered around. However, after reading the information in the paper crane, Yi Shuasong's expression became a little strange and subtle. Luo Yute said anxiously, have you found the whereabouts of my eldest brother? Where is he? Yi Shuasong looked up at Mu Yan and said after a while, I don't know if you have heard of the legendary heaven-mixing cave of the floating island. Mu Yan and the others looked at each other, all at a loss. This time it was Yi Shuasong's turn to be surprised. Haven't you heard of the heaven-mixing cave? After a pause, he tentatively said, is it possible that Lord Jun and your fellow apprentices were not born on the floating island? Mu Yan smiled, Leader Yi, I think it doesn't matter where we come from. Of course, of course. Yi Shuasong laughed awkwardly, with Lord Jun's medical skills and strength, no matter where you come from, you will be a famous figure and the benefactor of our Luoyun alliance. To tell you the truth, the heaven-mixing cave is also a little famous on our floating island. Because every year, some people will disappear from this place and disappear, as if there is no such person in the world. Mu Yan was shocked and hurriedly asked, where is the chaotic heaven cave mansion? Is my eldest brother there? The location of the heaven-mixing cave changes every year. But as long as the heaven-mixing cave appears, there will be mountains of nine-tailed dragon sunflower. And this year, the nine-tailed dragon sunflower is blooming here. Yi Shuasong took out a map and pointed to a location. It was located at the border of the Lan Empire, at the border of the in-family's spirit-gathering city. My subordinate sent back news that a month ago, someone saw young Master Yun walking through the nine-tailed dragon sunflower field, but then there was no trace of him. Yi Shuasong stroked his beard and said, according to this old man's guess, young Master Yun must have accidentally been drawn into the heaven-mixing abode. Luo Yu asked anxiously, is that cave very dangerous? What will happen to my eldest senior brother? This old man cannot be sure either. Yi Shuasong sighed and said, the reason why the chaotic heaven cave mansion is called a legend is that no one has really seen its full appearance. And those who entered it, some came out safely, their strength greatly increased, and they also obtained a lot of treasures. However, there are also some people who have disappeared without a trace. Not even their bones were left. However, even those who managed to escape safely did not know how they managed to escape, nor did they know what kind of place the chaotic heaven abode was. Moreover, Yi Shuasong paused. There are very, very few people who can come out of the chaotic heaven cave alive. So over time, people would deliberately avoid the nine-tailed dragon sunflower when they saw it. After all, no matter how good the treasure is, it's not as important as your own life. Mayan's brows were tightly knitted and her eyes were heavy. It was very likely that the eldest senior brother had really entered the chaotic heaven cave mansion, so there had been no news of him. Mayan looked at her fellow apprentices and saw the worry and determination in their eyes. She smiled slightly and asked Yi Shuasong, Alliance Master Yi, if I want to go to the chaotic heaven cave mansion, how can I ensure that I can enter? Charming Witch Doctor, Heaven-defying baby and black-bellied father, please collect. Charming Witch Doctor, Heaven-defying baby and black-bellied father, please collect. Chapter 3478. Yi Shuasong's eyes widened slightly, revealing a surprised expression. Have you really thought it through? Are you going to the heaven-mixing cave? That's a place where there's a high chance that you won't be able to come out alive. Of course. Mu Yan said slowly, we're going to take eldest brother home in person. At the border of the Lan Empire. There was an official road connecting the spirit-gathering city and the border station of the Lan Empire. On weekdays, there were always people coming and going, and it was very lively. However, at this moment, there were very few people walking on this official road. Even if someone passed by, they would be careful and take a detour with a vigilant face. Because at the interruption of the official road, there were several nine-tailed dragon sunflowers. On both sides of the official road, more nine-tailed dragon sunflowers had gathered into a flower field. These flowers were golden yellow, swaying gently in the wind. From a distance, it was as if the official road was covered with a layer of golden light, which was beautiful. However, such a beautiful field of flowers was like the bloody mouth of a wild beast. It would swallow up the passers-by at any time. At this time, several cultivators in the family's clothes were carefully bypassing the flower field and heading for the border station of the Lawn Empire. How long will these nine-tailed dragon sunflowers bloom here? During this period of time, several people of our family have been accidentally swallowed into the heaven-mixing cave. It's been several days and they haven't come out yet. I'm afraid they will never come out again. The speaker looked sad, and his eyes were full of fear and hatred as he looked at the nine-tailed dragon sunflowers. Alas, there's nothing we can do about it. When the nine-tailed dragon sunflowers first appeared, no one expected it. Senior Brother Zhang and all the people on the official road were caught off guard. They were directly dragged into the chaotic heaven cave. Where did this heaven-mixing cave abode come from? Why hasn't it disappeared after so many years, and the frequency of its appearance is getting higher and higher? Is there really no way for Senior Brother Zhang and the others to come out alive? The one who answered was a calm and prudent middle-aged man. He couldn't help sighing softly. In the early years, there were still many people who could come out of the heaven-mixing cave alive, and they gained a lot. But slowly, the danger level in the chaotic heaven cave abode became higher and higher. It was as if the cultivators who died inside had provided it with enough nourishment, allowing it to thrive. Over the years, there were very few people who could come out of the chaotic heaven cave alive. Especially since most of the people who went in this time were unprepared and weak. I'm afraid. Before the middle-aged man could finish his words, suddenly, he saw a young man in white with a red scarf over his eyes. He was walking slowly toward the center of the flower field, where the most splendid nine-tailed black sunflower was in full bloom. Hey, little brother, it's dangerous over there. Come back quickly. The middle-aged man instinctively shouted. The young man in white seemed to have heard his voice as well. He turned around and curled his thin lips into a shy smile. Then, he picked the most blooming nine-tailed dragon sunflower and sniffed it with a satisfied expression on his face. Sigh, why doesn't this person listen to advice? The middle-aged man anxiously tried to pull him back. Was that kid an idiot? He had told him it was dangerous, but he still foolishly stayed there to pick the flowers. Now he even sat down in the sea of flowers with a comfortable look. Beautiful Enchantress, heaven-defying baby, black-bellied father, please collect. Beautiful Enchantress, heaven-defying baby, black-bellied father, please collect. Chapter 3479. What was the difference between this and courting death? Uncle Ching, don't worry about him. This kid is courting death. Why should we care about him? Come on, let's go to the courier station. I always feel uneasy next to this field of nine-tailed dragon sunflower. It's so scary. The middle-aged man called Uncle Ching could only sigh regretfully and pity when he heard this, and quickened his pace. Although this field of nine-tailed dragon sunflower grew on the ground. But if you walked carefully and didn't use any spiritual power, you might not be noticed. But if you flew in the air, you would most likely be sucked into the cave. They had just walked a few meters when the ground under their feet suddenly shook. Then, the entire field of nine-tailed dragon sunflower began to roll like waves. Uncle Cheng and the others turned around and all showed expressions of disbelief. Even the blindfolded young man, who was slowly sniffing the nine-tailed dragon sunflower, showed a somewhat surprised expression and raised his head. The next moment, a crack appeared in the middle of the flower field. Dazzling light flashed, and the spiritual power in the air fluctuated. All the flowers and leaves seemed to be blown by the wind, swaying and making rustling sounds. This process lasted for a full quarter of an hour before the wind began to subside. The golden light gradually dimmed, revealing a man standing in the middle of the flower field. The man looked about 27 or 28 years old. He had clear eyebrows, a handsome face, and a slender and tall figure. In fact, he was still very young. It was just that his entire demeanor and every movement of his seemed to be mature and steady, which made people think that he was already in his 30s. The young man held a sword in his hand. The tip of the sword drooped down slightly and fell on a nine-tailed dragon sunflower. The nine-tailed dragon sunflower was immediately infected by frost, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into an ice flower. Uncle Cheng and the others stared blankly at the young man who had just appeared, and it took them a long time to come to their senses. He came out of the chaotic heaven cave. Someone came out of the chaotic heaven cave. The people of the Yin family didn't even care about the horror of the flower field. They hurriedly took 2 steps forward and shouted from afar, "May I ask your name? Did you come out of the chaotic heaven cave?" At first glance, this young man's cultivation base was only at the early stage of the profound life realm. Compared to Uncle Cheng's mountain opening realm, it was an entire realm lower. However, for some reason, Uncle Cheng felt that this person was not simple. When the sword had casually frozen the nine-tailed dragon sunflower, he had even felt a trace of fear. Yes. This man was likely to have come out of the chaotic heaven cave alive. How could it be simple? Therefore, Uncle Cheng spoke to him in a very polite tone. When the young man heard this, he didn't show any indifference or arrogance. Instead, he smiled and cupped his hands at him. "I'm Yun Ruhan. I just came out of the heaven mixing cave mansion. How did you get out of the chaotic heaven cave alive? Have you seen any of my brothers from the Yin clan?" Yun Ruhan smiled bitterly. "To be honest, I don't know how I got out of the chaotic heaven abode." He had gone through a lot of trouble to get the news of Liberty City, and he suspected that it might be related to his junior sister. He was about to ride his sword to take a look. When he passed by this official road, he found that there was a large field of nine-tailed dragon sunflower flowers underground. Yun Ruhan remembered that this thing was very useful for his junior sister to refine medicine, so he wanted to collect some. "Charming witch doctor, heaven-defying baby, black-bellied father, please collect it. Charming witch doctor, heaven-defying baby, black-bellied father, please collect it." Chapter 3480. As a result, as soon as he flew over the flower field, he heard a noisy shout coming from below. Yun Ruhan vaguely heard someone below telling him, "Don't go over, and it's dangerous." But before he could react, he felt a huge suction coming over. When he woke up, he had already entered the chaotic heaven cave. And what was even more unfortunate was, in the chaotic heaven cave, he met an old acquaintance. An old acquaintance who could kill him. Because of a habitual action, he was recognized by the other party, which led to the other party chasing him all the way. Yun Ruhan used a little trick to make him fall into the herd of beasts. But whether this person really died in the chaotic heaven cave, he was not sure. The top priority was to hide his whereabouts and leave as soon as possible. Yun Ruhan briefly told him what she had seen and heard in the heaven-mixing cave abode. Then he cupped his hands and said goodbye. He didn't notice that the blindfolded youth in white in the flower field was looking at him with a faint smile on his lips. On his slender white fingers, there was a blooming nine-tailed black sunflower. Black gas lingered on his fingertips, and the beautiful flower withered in an instant. He murmured in a voice that only he could hear, "This person seems to be the senior brother Mu Yen is looking for. It doesn't look good. But what does it have to do with me?" The youth was talking to himself. Yun Ruhan had already stepped onto the Ice Soul Sword and was about to leave. Suddenly, his face changed dramatically, and he suddenly fell down from the sword. The Ice Soul Sword fell into the sea of flowers with its master. And at the place where he originally stood, the air slowly rippled like water. Then a giant blue beast appeared, gently waving its claws as if it was playing. If Yun Ruhan was still in this position just now, he would have been directly torn in half by these sharp claws. However, there was not the slightest joy on Yun Ruhan's face. His face was deathly pale, his eyes staring at the giant blue beast in the air, his hands trembling and clenching into fists. And there were not a few people with the same expression as Yun Ruhan. Uncle Cheng and the others of the Yin family were also dumbstruck, their legs trembling. After a long while, someone whispered, Is that the divine beast Water Qilin? The legendary summoned beast closest to the sovereign level. In this world, the only one who can summon the divine beast Water Qilin is the Lan Empire's imperial preceptor. The last 3 words were forcefully swallowed by the person who spoke. Because he saw that beside the Water Qilin, a man dressed in light blue clothes, with long hair fluttering in the wind, a face so pale that it was almost abnormal, and his eyes were dark red, appeared slowly. Uncle Cheng sucked in a breath of cold air. The Lan Empire's state preceptor, Yi Qingfeng. It really was Yi Qingfeng. Didn't they say that he hadn't left the palace for many, many years? What was he doing here? Recalling the rumors about this person, Uncle Cheng felt a chill run down his spine. His hands were trembling as he protected the juniors of the Yin family behind him before he forced himself to calm down and bowed. I am a disciple of the Yin family of Spirit Gathering City. Greetings, Imperial Advisor. However, Yi Qingfeng didn't even look at him. His gaze landed on Yun Ruhan. That pair of dark red phoenix eyes curled up slightly. Her captivating red lips curled into a devilish smile. I was wondering who it was. So it was an old acquaintance. Your First Highness, how have you been? The first prince. Uncle Cheng and the others were stunned. Which first prince? Was there still a first prince in the Lan Empire's royal family? Wasn't there only his 9th Highness who was still a child? Alluring witch doctor, heaven-defying baby, black-bellied dad, please bookmark. Alluring witch doctor, heaven-defying baby, black-bellied dad, please bookmark. Chapter 3481. Yun Ruhan took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. He straightened his back and stared straight into Yi Qingfeng's eyes. Advisor, long time no see. Yi Qingfeng raised his eyebrows and landed on the ground. He looked at him with interest. After so many years, Your Highness seems to have changed a lot. I almost didn't recognize you. Yun Ruhan said coldly, Advisor, you haven't changed at all. Disgusting as always. Uncle Cheng and the others were scared out of their wits. Who was this Yun Ruhan? Didn't he know Yi Qingfeng's identity and strength? He dared to call him disgusting. Did he not want to live? Yi Qingfeng caressed the Water Qilin calmly. He was not angry or annoyed. He said lightly, If Your Highness is still alive, then the Crown Prince must be alive too, right? This is really good news. Yun Ruhan's pupils shrank. His eyes were filled with killing intent. The spirit energy in his body surged. The Ice Soul Sword radiated coldness and turned into ice blades that attacked Yi Qingfeng. The Water Qilin opened its bloody mouth and roared. Those ice blades immediately changed their trajectory and fell into its mouth. Following that, the huge beast soared into the sky and spat blue liquid at Yun Ruhan. Yi Qingfeng looked at Yun Ruhan dodging the Water Qilin's attack with difficulty and smiled. Don't struggle. You can't escape anyway. More than 10 years ago, you managed to escape from my hands once. Do you think you can escape again this time? Yun Ruhan turned a deaf ear to his words. The ice soul sword in his hand suddenly stabbed the water ball. The water ball immediately shattered into ice shards. However, the water Qilin spat out water balls faster and faster. The pressure of the divine beast became more and more unbearable. Finally, a water ball brushed past Yun Ruhan's shoulder. He immediately groaned. His hand holding the ice soul sword lost its strength. The sword almost fell out of his hand. Yun Ruhan quickly moved the sword to his left hand. But at this time, his vision blurred. A shadow covered him. Intense pain came from his abdomen. With a bone-chilling coldness, it invaded every inch of his flesh and bones. Yun Ruhan's pale lips moved, and her gaze shifted downwards. He saw a pale, slender hand holding a blue icicle that pierced through his abdomen. The veins on the back of his hand were slightly bulging in a sickly manner. Yun Ruhan's gaze moved upwards, landing on Yi Qingfeng's smiling face. His low and slightly hoarse voice sounded beside her ear. "First Highness, from the bottom of my heart, I admire your character, but unfortunately, who asked you to be a member of the Lan family? So long as it's a member of the Lan imperial family, they must all go to hell. It's the same for you, and it's the same for the little crown prince. Regardless of whether Xiao Taizi is on the floating island or on the cultivation continent, I will definitely find him." Yun Ruhan's heart trembled as she glared at Yi Qingfeng. "You dare hurt Xiao Qi? Ha! You want to use the nightmare ghost spirit to perish together with me?" Yi Qingfeng's hand had unknowingly grabbed Yun Ruhan's neck. "You don't have the qualifications right now. And I won't let you die so easily. You can go to that luxurious and cold imperial palace and accompany your beloved father and mother." Woo! His expression changed, and he was about to retreat. But Yun Ruhan's movements were faster than him. Chapter 3482. But Yun Ruhan moved faster than him. Their bodies were tightly pressed together. The ice soul sword had become the size of a palm and stabbed into Yi Qingfeng's chest. In Yun Ruhan's abdomen, the blue icicle stabbed deeper and came out from his back. Yi Qingfeng's face finally showed some shock. "You can still use spiritual power." "No, this isn't spiritual power, it's demonic energy. Not only did you change your body to be reborn, but you also turned your soul and body into demonic energy." "How interesting." Yi Qingfeng seemed like he didn't feel the sword in his chest at all. Instead, he chuckled with great interest. Yun Ruhan's face changed. She suddenly felt something and looked at her chest in disbelief. There was not a single drop of blood. There was a terrifying and rich power surging there, which had the same fluctuation as the energy in her body. Yun Ruhan suddenly looked up at Yi Qingfeng. You are also," the last word demonic was not spoken. Her neck was broken with a crack. "Ah!" Uncle Cheng and the others screamed, their faces pale and trembling. The Imperial Advisor killed the person who came out of the heaven-mixing cave. He killed Yun Ruhan so easily. The whole place was dead silent. Only the youth sitting in the flowers laughed in a low voice. His eyes were covered with red silk, but he seemed to have seen something interesting. Yi Qingfeng looked down at him, his eyes darkening. The water Kylan beside him seemed to feel uneasy. It kept kicking with its front feet and growling from time to time. It seemed to feel Yi Qingfeng's gaze. The youth in the flowers raised his head, curled the corner of his mouth and said gently, "Don't mind me. I hate meddling in other people's business. I'm just waiting for someone here." Yi Qingfeng looked at him for a while and then smiled faintly. The obscure cold light in his eyes was faintly discernible. "Greetings, Imperial Advisor." A middle-aged man with long and thin limbs and an ugly sarcoma on his head appeared beside Yi Qingfeng. He had long and thin eyes and a nose like an eagle's hook. When he looked down with a gloomy gaze, Uncle Qing and the others felt their scalps go numb and their legs tremble. "What can I do for you, Imperial Tutor?" Yi Qingfeng stroked the water Qilin's head and said indifferently, "Other than that blind man in the bushes, kill everyone else. After a person comes out of the chaotic heaven cave, there will be a short period of 15 minutes. Do you understand?" "Understood." The middle-aged man bowed and nodded. Then, he revealed a mocking smile, "Killing these trash doesn't need 15 minutes. Don't worry, Imperial Tutor. I will definitely complete the task." The hearts of everyone from the clan sank to the bottom when they heard this, and the blood drained from their faces. In fact, Uncle Qing had been worried about this matter since the beginning. During these 10+ years, the Lan clan empire's imperial preceptor had single-handedly controlled the court affairs and was high and mighty, and no one was able to go against him. However, he rarely left the palace. Occasionally, he would appear outside, but that place would always be plunged into misery and suffering, leaving not a single survivor. Uncle Qing gritted his teeth, and the soul orb behind him flickered. A huge brown lion appeared in front of everyone. "You guys run. I'll block them." "But Uncle Qing, I told you to run, did you hear me?" The faces of everyone from the clan were full of tears. Finally, under Uncle Cheng's urging, they turned around and stepped onto their flying swords, flying in different directions. Chapter 3483. Yi Qingfeng didn't even look at them. With a wave of his hand, the water Kirin disappeared along with Yun Ruhan on its back. The middle-aged man stood up. He looked down at Uncle Qing and the lion he had summoned, and the look of mockery on his face became even more pronounced. "I really don't understand. You know it's futile and you'll die. Why do you have to put up such pointless resistance?" Uncle Qing clenched his teeth and didn't answer. Activating his divine sense, the brown lion roared and pounced toward the middle-aged man. "Do you think that by using your life and your summoned beast to stall me, you can fight for a chance for your juniors? Hee, stupid." The middle-aged man shook his head with pity in his eyes. "In my eyes, you're just ants. No matter how far an ant crawls, I can easily crush it with a stomp." The next moment, the man in the sky suddenly disappeared. The lion pounced on empty air. Uncle Cheng's eyes widened as a look of horror appeared on his face. Bang! A corpse covered in blood was thrown in front of him. It was a little girl in her 20s with a good talent in talisman drawing. She was cute and delicate with a lively personality. She always smiled sweetly and called him Uncle Qing. At this moment, the lively little girl had turned into an ice-cold corpse. There was a bull-sized hole in her abdomen. Inside were burned organs. Her fair little face was covered in blood. Her eyes were wide open as if she couldn't believe she died just like that. Uncle Cheng's hand holding the sword began to tremble. The lion that returned to his side also roared angrily. However, it wasn't over yet. Bang bang bang. The second one, the third one, the fourth one, all the clan's disciples who escaped, those young and energetic cultivators who should have a bright future. Now, they all turned into cold corpses. Tears blurred Uncle Cheng's vision. He trembled violently, staring at the middle-aged man. His eyes were filled with hatred as if he wanted to perish together with him. "Don't look at me like that." The middle-aged man chuckled. "The tears and roars of the weak are just a joke." Uncle Qing asked in a hoarse voice, "Why?" "Our clan has no enmity with your Lan clan empire. We don't even know what the imperial preceptor has done. Why is there a need to silence us?" "How would I know?" The person in front of him grinned. revealing ugly yellow and black teeth. The tumor on his forehead trembled slightly. The Imperial Preceptor wanted me to kill him, and I'm just a sword in his hand. If the Imperial Preceptor wants you to die, you must die. Well, I've said enough. There's not much time before the chaotic Heaven Cave mansion reopens. I can't take the risk of destroying the Nation Preceptor. So, are you going to kill yourself, or do you want me to dig out your intestines? Uncle Ching roared and charged forward with his sword. Even if I die, I'll make you pay the price. The lion also roared angrily and bared its sharp fangs. The middle-aged man sneered and stretched out his hands. Black nails slowly grew on his slender fingers. Suddenly, like a cat, he quickly grabbed at the air. Roar! The lion let out a painful howl and fell to the ground. Uncle Ching felt a sharp pain in his sea of consciousness. He screamed and fell to the ground. Chapter 3484. But he doesn't have the time to pay attention to his body. He rolled and crawled towards his summoned beast, shouting something in a hoarse voice. He can't stop his tears from flowing. There's a huge wound on the lion's abdomen. Black flames are spreading from the wound, burning his internal organs, making a sizzling sound. Soon, the lion's internal organs will be completely burned by the black flames, turning into a corpse. Just like his martial nephews. The connection between his sea of consciousness and the summoned beast is getting weaker and weaker. Uncle Ching can't hold it in anymore, crying silently. Although this lion is only his summoned beast, it's been with him for so many years. At this moment, it seems to have a premonition of parting. It sticks out its tongue and licks Uncle Ching. A huge shadow, accompanied by a pressure that he can't resist, appears above his head. Uncle Ching raises his teary eyes, glaring at the ugly man in front of him with hatred. Then he closes his eyes in despair. Kill me. The middle-aged man smiles softly, raising his hand, his black nails slowly grabbing towards Uncle Chang's face. However, at this moment, a melodious sound of a zither comes from afar. There seems to be starlight falling from the sky, drilling into the lion's body. The black flames that were spreading gradually extinguish. The wound on the lion's abdomen is healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Uncle Chang's eyes widen, his heart is in turmoil. The contract between him and the summoned beast that had almost disappeared has reappeared. The lion has come back to life. Uncle Ching turns to look in the direction of the sound. Soon, he sees 5 figures flying towards him. The one in the lead is a beautiful girl with snow-white skin and picturesque features. She's holding a zither in her hands, and the melodious sound is from her. Who is that? Is it a fairy sent by heaven to save me? Hey, I clearly sensed eldest brother's spiritual power fluctuations. Why isn't he here? Luo Yu looks around, but she doesn't see any familiar figures. She immediately shows a disappointed expression. Mu Yan focuses her senses. That's right, eldest brother has indeed appeared here, and he seems to have experienced a battle. Her expression is slightly solemn. It seems that it's not just spiritual power fluctuations. There's also demonic energy. It's the demonic energy on eldest brother's body. What exactly happened here? His gaze swept across the ugly man with sarcomas and Uncle Ching, and he said slowly, "Have you seen someone?" She described Yun Ruhan's appearance. Uncle Chang's eyes widened slightly. Are you looking for young Master Yun Ruhan who came out of the chaotic heaven cave? You've seen my eldest senior brother. Luo Yu cried out in surprise. Tell us, where is he? Uncle Ching looked at the middle-aged man, his lips trembling. After a long while, he said in a hoarse voice, he was killed. What nonsense are you spouting? Luo Yu's eyes instantly turned red. Like an enraged beast, he clenched his fist and was about to swing it at Uncle Ching. If you dare to spout nonsense again, I'll kill you. How could eldest senior brother die? It's true. Uncle Ching shouted. The person who killed him was the Lan family empire's state preceptor, Yi Qingfeng. I saw Yi Qingfeng break his neck with my own eyes. This person. He pointed at the middle-aged man. He was left behind by Yi Qingfeng to silence us. The light in Luo Yu's eyes faded bit by bit. Her face was deathly pale without a trace of blood. Chapter 3485. Luo Yu's body was on the verge of collapse, almost unable to stand. How is that possible? I don't believe it, I definitely won't. A hand suddenly pressed on Luo Yu's shoulder, and a soft and slow voice rang in his ears, pulling his almost collapsed spirit back. Shao Qi, calm down. Have you forgotten eldest senior's current condition? He won't die if his neck is only broken. Luo Yu suddenly turned to look at Mayan, his eyes filled with hope, as if he was grasping at the last life-saving straw in despair. Sixth senior sister, will eldest senior really be all right? Mayan patted his head, and took out Yun Ruhan's soul lamp from the space. The green flame on it swayed gently, seeming to be much smaller than usual, but it was definitely not extinguished. Do you believe it now? Luo Yu let out a long sigh of relief, and smiled through his tears. It really scared me to death. Ling Yuma and the other two also patted their chests with trepidation. Damn, I was almost scared out of my wits as well. Since eldest senior was taken away by that nuisance of the state preceptor, shall we go and rescue him now? Hee, aren't you overestimating yourselves if you want to break into the palace and rescue someone from the hands of the state preceptor? Mayan looked at the middle-aged man who spoke. May I know who you are? The middle-aged man's pair of slender eyes falls on Mayan with a gloomy glint, and the tumor on his forehead gently trembles. His whole face looked extremely ugly and terrifying, but his tone was refined and courteous. I am the beast slave Yi Asian, under the state preceptor of the Lan family. Mayan said lightly, to put it bluntly, you're Yi Qingfeng's lackey. That's true. Yi Asian wasn't angry at all, and instead grinned, revealing 2 rows of yellow teeth. There are 4 beast slaves under the state preceptor, namely Yi Asian, Yi Asian, Yi Asian, and Yi Asian. Since they're slaves, it's also appropriate to call them dogs. Pfft. Asian, 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 Asian. Who came up with these names? Mayan's mouth twitched, and Luo Yu and Leng Yuma behind her laughed out loud without restraint. Yi Asian also laughed good-naturedly. This name was given to us by a good friend of the state preceptor. People always laugh when they hear it, but I think it's good. Because, anyone who laughs will die by my hands. On the surface, Mayan and the others seemed to be joking with Yi Asian. However, every nerve in his body was stretched taut, and he was on full alert. When Yi Asian's last voice fell, his figure had already disappeared on the spot. In the next moment, black fingernails with a strong fishy smell appeared in front of Mu Yan, ruthlessly clawing at her face. The long, sharp claws pierced through the girl's beautiful eyes. However, in the next moment, the person in front of him was like the moon in the water, rippling and dissipating. Yi Asian raised an eyebrow. Ha! Interesting. Hee, there's something even more interesting coming up. Boom! Blazing flames soared into the sky and turned into a red lotus, which gathered on the blade and slashed down at Yi Asian. A surprised look appeared on Yi Asian's face. This was because he felt as if his soul was being burned wherever the blade touched. The sarcomas on his head had been ruptured by the flames and were oozing out disgusting pus. Yi Asian rolled away to avoid Leng Yuma's fatal blow. In the next moment, an earthen thorn protruded from the ground and pierced through his clothes. If he hadn't dodged fast enough, it would have been his abdomen that would have been pierced. Chapter 3486. 1 second. Remember, LoveNet, providing you with wonderful reading. But before he could dodge, he felt that his hands and feet were bound by something and couldn't move. Not far away, a young man's figure slowly appeared like the wind, controlling the silk thread in his hand to imprison his movements. Bang! A fist hit Yi Aishan's forehead. He was struck until he saw stars. But it wasn't over yet. At some point in time, the crisp cry of a bird came from the sky. Huge red wings spread out, covering the sky. Yi Aishan didn't show much surprise or fear when he was so embarrassed before. Now that he heard the bird cry, he raised his head and suddenly opened his eyes wide, saying incredulously, "Is this the divine bird Defying? Who on the floating continent can summon such a divine beast?" Defying, like the water Qilin, was a divine beast infinitely close to the sovereign level. Chirp! Defying screamed, spewed out a ball of flame, and flapped its huge wings. The air seemed to roll up a storm, and the spreading fire directly hit Yi Aishan's face and body. His body was bound by Ling Yuxing's cloud silk, and he couldn't break free. He could only bear this attack. In an instant, most of his clothes and hair were burned, and even most of his sarcoma was burnt. It was a horrible sight. Yi Aishan laughed softly. "You little guys are really interesting. What other attacks do you want to show? I really want to continue to see." Before his voice fell, he saw that a crystal-clear long sword had appeared in the hands of the girl playing the zither. "Okay. Then I'll show you. You have to stand still and don't move." The girl's voice was clear and sweet, and the smile on her lips was brighter than the spring sunshine. With her voice, the transparent long sword trembled slightly, and turned into a stream of light flying toward Yi Aishan. Yi Aishan's face changed greatly, and his whole body's momentum suddenly broke out. The cloud silk that bound him was broken. Yi Aishan rolled and crawled several meters to the side, narrowly avoiding the 7 supreme swords that were flying at him. Seeing that the transparent long sword returned to Mu Yan's hand, he breathed a long sigh of relief. He was still in shock, and there was a lingering fear on his face. Mu Yan curls her lips in regret. "I said I wouldn't hide. Miss, the power of your sword far surpasses that of a heavenly divine tool. If I didn't dodge, I would have lost half of my life." Yi Aishan laughed. After he finished speaking, the smile on his face gradually became sinister and perverse. He raised his voice and said, "It seems that you will not obediently follow me back to see the Grand Tutor." Mu Yan coldly said, "Yi Qingfeng, we will naturally meet him. Bring your head with us." Hee hee. Hee 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 hee. How many years has it been since I've heard such boasting? Yi Aishan threw his head back and laughed. As he laughed, his body began to undergo tremendous changes. Except for his hands that had turned into sharp claws. A pair of huge black bone wings extended from his back. His entire face kept stretching and twisting, and his yellowish teeth protruded out, turning into sharp teeth like those of a ferocious beast. The half-burnt sarcoma on his forehead seemed to have something bursting out of his flesh and turned into a black horn. At this moment, the person in front of him could not be called a human at all. On the contrary, he was more like a monster that was neither human nor beast. Uncle Cheng's whole body stiffened and collapsed to the ground. His eyes stared blankly, and he could not even tremble. The blood in his body had frozen. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit Zii. Chapter 3487. 1 second. Remember LoveNet, providing you with wonderful reading. Only now did he realize that when Yi Aishan killed the Yin family, he didn't even use 1,000th of his strength. Uncle Cheng thought that his strength was at most at the peak of the mountain opening stage, slightly higher than his own, and that his magical abilities were far superior to his own. But now, the pressure that this monster exudes, and the spiritual power fluctuations that pervade the air. This was clearly a peak sea-splitting stage expert. Even if the family's patriarch came out, he might not necessarily be her opponent. How could this be? How could Yi Qingfeng have such a terrifying expert under his command? And according to Yi Aixin, there were 4 such experts, including him. 4 peak sea-splitting stage experts, plus Yi Qingfeng, whose strength was unfathomable. If he wanted to make things difficult for the major sects and families, Uncle Cheng's face was full of horror, almost not daring to think further. Yi Qingfeng secretly cultivated such a force. And then ruthlessly killed everyone who saw it. What was he planning? After Yi Aixin transformed, the expressions of Mayan and the others became incomparably solemn. Shao Qi, what state is he in? Luo Yu hesitated. He seems to have fused with his summoned beast. After a pause, his brows tightly wrinkled. Perhaps his strength has already surpassed the peak of the sea-splitting stage. There was one more sentence that he didn't say. As a summoner, Luo Yu had also studied a lot of books related to this. He had also inadvertently seen this kind of secret method of fusing the body with the summoned beast. Using this kind of secret method, one's strength could indeed increase several times in a short period of time. But the price to pay was also enormous. Luo Yu couldn't figure it out. Would there really be people who would not hesitate to suffer the consequences of eternal damnation in order to pursue temporary strength? But he quickly threw this thought to the back of his mind. Why Yi Aixin chose this path had nothing to do with him. But now it was obvious that Yi Aixin was too powerful after fusing with the summoned beast. It was already far beyond the scope of what they could contend against. This little guy really knows a lot. Yi Aixin's tone was the same as usual, but his voice was rumbling. And when he opened and closed his mouth, there was still bloody saliva stuck between his teeth. The air was filled with a nauseating stench. After so many years on the floating island, this is the first time I've seen a cultivator who gave me such a good impression. Unfortunately, all of you will soon die in my hands. Yi Aixin slowly raised his sharp claws and said in a deep voice, I'm sorry. In your next life, don't ever set foot on the floating island again. The next moment, the huge monster disappeared. Mu Yan has long been completely engrossed. Seeing Yi Aixin move, divine hands weave the heavens instantly activated. There was a loud bang in his ear. Mu Yan's internal organs shook violently as if they were overturning rivers and seas, and she almost vomited blood. The few people who were protected by the sound wall were pushed back dozens of meters by the strong wind. Sixth senior sister, are you all right? Mayan doesn't have time to respond to her fellow apprentice's concern. Her fingers quickly strummed the Tian Mo Qin. Because Yi Aixin had attacked again. The inescapable net fell from the sky. This was a derivative skill of musical blade. With Mu Yan's current cultivation, and the repaired, little shang, string of the Tian Mo Qin, the inescapable net, transformed into could cut an ordinary divine tool into pieces. But Yi Aixin stretched out his black claws and grabbed the air a few times, and directly crushed the inescapable net into pieces. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit Zii. Chapter 3488. Behind Mayan, Leng Yuma and the other 3 have already used their unique skills. However, the moves that could make Yi Aixin battered and exhausted before the transformation are all easily resolved by him now. Even the Baifeng divine beast was sent flying by a single punch and fell unconscious. Yi Aixin says lightly, in the face of absolute strength, all moves and tricks are just a deathbed struggle. Luo Yu grits her teeth and gets up, a looming white light flashing behind her. Mayan presses his shoulder and says in a deep voice, "I'll do it." She knows that Luo Yu is going to use the Bai Zhe divine beast. But it's not yet. The big brother is in Yi Qingfeng's hands. Di Mingju is not around. They can't even beat a beast slave under Yi Qingfeng, let alone the terrible state preceptor himself. If Luo Yu's identity and the existence of the Bai Zhe divine beast are exposed now, it is likely to bring disaster to Luo Yu and Liberty City. Mayan raises her hand, and the 7 absolute swords appear in her hand. At the same time, 7 subordinate swords appear behind her. No one is playing, but the sound of the zither is melodious. Then, the second and third Mayan appear. Heavy Phantom, the 3 shadow doppelgangers are launched. One of Mayan's fingers continues to strum on the Tian Mo Qin, displaying the next skill. She shouted, "Set up the Big Dipper formation." 7 white lights fly out from the Tian Mo Qin and submerge into the bodies of the 7 people. If the big brother and the third brother are here, the Big Dipper formation can exert its greatest power. Now, using the shadow doppelgangers to fill the missing positions is a great consumption for Mayan. But she has no other way. Luo Yu's Bai Zhe can't be exposed. Her power of law is blocked by Di Mingju and can't be used. Now, she can only fight to the death. Yi Aishan looks at them with great interest, and finally his eyes fall on Mayan. "Your zither and musician skills are not simple. They shouldn't be something from the floating island, right?" As he speaks, his fingers tremble slightly. The fingernails fall off and converge into a strangely shaped hook sword. "If you can receive my sword, I'll spare your life." As soon as the voice falls, the monster's huge figure has disappeared. Then, an attack with the weight of Mount Tai, mixed with a fishy stench, swept down from the sky. "Be careful, junior sister. Out of the way." Mayan's eyes sink, and her grip on the 7 absolute sword tightens. The 7 subordinate swords behind him buzzed and vibrated. There was not the slightest trace of fear in those rippling peach blossom eyes. Instead, a raging battle intent was ignited within them. However, before that terrifying attack could land, a white light flashed across the sky. Then, Yi Aishan's huge body flew hundreds of meters away and heavily hit the 9-tailed dragon sunflower. Mayan's eyes widen as she stares at the white-clothed youth in front of her. As if he felt her gaze, the young man came back to his senses and revealed a face that was covered with a red scarf, but it couldn't hide his handsome face. Her light pink lips slightly hooked up, her expression bashful and happy. "Mayan, I've finally waited for you." Mu Yan was stunned for a long time before she found her voice. "Li Weiran. Why are you here?" Li Weiran's smile is warm and soft. "I said, I've been waiting for you here." "Waiting for me for what?" Mayan says lightly, "You want me to get something from Tingguang ruins for you? Can you tell me, and I'll go get it for you." Chapter 3489. 1 second to remember, LoveNet, providing you with interesting reading. Li Weiran frowned and said bitterly, "It's been a long time since we last met. Why do we have to talk about these boring topics? In fact, I'm homeless now. I came to seek refuge with you. Mu Yan, can you take me in? I'm good at literature and martial arts. I can cook and work in the hole. I can do anything." With that, he looked at Yi Aishan with a smile that wasn't a smile. "For example, this beast slave. If you want his life, I can give it to you right now." Yi Aishan's expression was solemn. He remembered Yi Qingfeng's words, "Except for that blind man. Even the Grand Tutor was afraid of him. He couldn't possibly be his opponent." Yi Aishan didn't even think about it. He returned to his original form and fled. Li Weiran looked at Yi Aishan's receding figure with interest and chuckled. It's all Mu Yan's fault that you didn't say anything. What if he ran away? Mu Yan's mouth twitched. She really couldn't do anything to this pervert. Li Weiran said, I'm homeless now. Mu Yan, how about you take me in? I can protect you and Xiao Bao. Even if you want to go to the palace and take back your senior, I can help. Mu Yan looks at him coldly. You watched helplessly as my eldest brother was taken away. She didn't say it as a question, but as an affirmation. Li Weiran chuckled and said faintly, that's natural. Even if I want to show off, I have to do it in front of Mu Yan. Otherwise, wouldn't it be useless? Then, his face changed again. As long as Mu Yan makes a request, no matter how dangerous the palace is, I will help you save him. But, if you want my help, you have to pay a price. For example, dream on. A small dumpling suddenly appeared between the two of them and pushed Li Weiran. Xiao Bao grabbed Mu Yan's hand tightly and glared at Li Weiran. The Bixia sword at his waist buzzed. Mother belongs to Daddy and me. You don't have a share. Stop dreaming. Li Weiran chuckled. Little guy, do you know who your biological father is? That man called Di Mingju doesn't seem to be your biological father, right? Little Treasure was taken aback, and the light in his eyes dimmed for a moment. Li Weiran. Mu Yan stared at him coldly. I dare you to say that again. Li Weiran coughed lightly and touched his nose. I was wrong, I'm sorry. Mu Yan, don't be angry, I was just talking nonsense. Mu Yan. Damn it, it's like she's punched cotton. She's so sullen that she wants to die. She can't wait to directly trample this guy into meat paste. Li Weiran saw that her face was still dark. He glanced at Xiao Bao and said reluctantly, all right, you're sorry too. No need. I don't care. Ling Yuma moved closer to Mu Yan's side. I say, junior sister, where did this pervert who has the same temperament as third senior brother come from? Why does it sound like Instructor Mo's love rival? Her voice was strangely excited. Teacher Mo saw this scene, wouldn't he go crazy? Wouldn't he directly destroy the entire floating island? Luo Yu pinched her nose and said, this person isn't just a pervert, he's simply a lunatic. Now that she saw this Li Weiran, Luo Yu felt a chill on her neck. Back then, because she stopped him from disturbing Mu Yan's treatment of third senior brother, this guy almost killed her. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit the website. Chapter 3490. Li Weiran's strength is clearly not on the same level as theirs. But so what if he's powerful? He still can't compare to Instructor Mo. Every time Instructor Mo appears, this guy is like a mouse seeing a cat, running away faster than a ghost. Mu Yan slightly squints at Li Weiran. How do you know Di Mingju? How do you know if he's Xiao Bao's biological father? Li Weiran, who are you? Li Weiran slowly walks a few steps closer, his eyes behind the red silk stare straight at Mu Yan, who wouldn't know the polar domain's emperor. As for who I am, how do I know if he's Xiao Bao's biological father? He pauses. I also want to tell you now, but I'm afraid the situation doesn't allow it. As soon as his voice falls, Mu Yan feels a huge suction force attacking. Immediately after, a large crack appears on the ground below. Bastard. We actually forgot that this is the entrance to the chaotic heaven cave. Mu Yan's group of 5, including Xiao Bao and Li Weiran, all fall down. Only Uncle Qing, who escaped further away, escapes this disaster. Uncle Qing looks at the empty flower field in shock. His hands and feet go soft, unable to stand for a long time. Those young boys and girls who can contend against Yaetian, they are all swallowed into the chaotic heaven cave. Can they still come out alive? Uncle Chink shakily stands up with great difficulty. He collects the family's corpses and is about to leave. Suddenly, a golden light shoots over like lightning from afar. Uncle Ching, who has just experienced a life and death situation, has long become a frightened bird. Seeing the person suddenly appear in front of him, he is so scared that he almost covers his head and scurries away. Amitba, benefactor, don't panic. This little monk just wants to ask you something. Uncle Ching calms himself down, only then does he realize that the person who came is actually a young monk with delicate features. His tone is very gentle and humble, there is no murderous aura around him, instead there is a trace of holiness. Uncle Chang sighs in relief. What does the great monk want to ask? The little monk looks around, then says, just now, was there a person playing the zither here? This little monk means, was there a musician who used a spell here? Uncle Chang was startled. He nodded and said, there was indeed a lady playing the zither. She used the skills of a musician. The little monk's expression turned solemn. He bowed and said, benefactor, please tell me where she is now, or which direction she went. Uncle Ching pointed to the ground and said, just now, it was swallowed into the heaven-mixing cave. The small monk lowered his long eyelashes and looked at the nine-tailed dragon sunflower. Amitba, so that's how it is. This is a random teleportation formation. I have no choice but to make a trip to the mystic realm. After saying that, the little monk put his palms together and slowly walked into the flowering shrub. Chapter 3491. Guji. Seeing that she had opened her eyes, the little chick pounced over excitedly and crashed into her arms. Mom, that's great, you're finally awake. Huang Huang was so scared. Big-eyed Chick's fluffy and chubby body was shivering. His head is buried in Mayan's arms, but his buttocks are twisting and turning, looking indescribably comical. Poochie. She hears a chuckle, and Mu Yen can't help but raise her head to look. The one who laughed was a handsome young man with his hair tied up in a jade crown. Seeing Mu Yen looking at him, he smiled and said, I am Ningyu. It is my honor to meet such a beautiful girl here. As soon as this person opened his mouth, Mu Yen found that something was wrong. Although his voice was a little low and neutral, it was clear and melodious. Taking a closer look at this person's appearance, although he didn't have any makeup on, his eyebrows were delicate, and his neck was fair and slender. Although it was half covered by the collar, if one looked closely, one could see that he didn't have an Adam's apple. This was a girl dressed as a man. Honor my ass. A flustered and exasperated voice came from the side. The two of us have been trapped in this godforsaken place for more than 10 days and are about to become food for this monster. How can you still feel honored? Bah! Damn women have long hair and short brains. They can't even recognize their own situation. Mu Yan looks to the other side and sees a burly man with an unkempt beard and an impatient look on his face. Only then did she realize that she seemed to be in a very strange place. The surroundings were pitch black, with only the illumination crystal in the middle emitting a faint yellow light. The ground under his feet was sticky, but there was no stench. Instead, there was a rich fragrance. This is the bud of the 10,000 rotten flower. As if sensing Mu Yan's confusion, Ningyut stood up and walked to her side, revealing a friendly smile. 10,000 rotten flower. Magical plants. Mu Yan had previously seen a description of this kind of flower in the Record of Countering Poisonous Creatures, found in the Tian Imo Chin's Spacebook Pagoda. This is a kind of man-eating flower. The 10,000 rotten flower was incomparably huge, and it would only ever be in two states, budding or in full bloom. The blooming 10,000 rotten flower was as big as a small house. It was good at capturing any living thing around it. These living creatures are not eaten immediately, but are stored in the flower sacs. This continued until the 10,000 rotten flower went from its blooming stage to its budding state. It needed to absorb enough nutrients to bloom again, so it began to devour the reserve food in the pouch. Just now, Ningyu said that they were in the flower bud of the 10,000 rotten flower. In other words, they were the reserves of the 10,000 rotten flower. He would be eaten sooner or later. Mayan raises her hand, the 7 absolute sword appears in her palm, and she slashes it high up in the air. However, the sword chi did not even cause a ripple when it entered the darkness. TSK. Idiot, if this 10,000 rotten flower can be easily broken, do you think we would still be trapped here? Mu Yan doesn't pay any attention to the toe-digging man's ridicule. She turns around and walks around, using her hand to knock on the flower wall. It was soft, a little sticky, and had a strong floral fragrance. The little chick hopped over on its short legs and pecked at the wall of the flower with its sharp beak. Then, he would spit, poo poo poo, in disgust. Mu Yan lowered her head to look at the playful little chick with a strange look in her eyes. This guy really is like a fish in water, no matter where he goes. Chapter 3492. What kind of spiritual pet is this? Why haven't I seen it before? At some point, Ningyu had walked up to her side. She looked at the little chick with hesitation. I don't sense any cultivation or spirit energy fluctuations from it. Could it be that its cultivation is so high that even I can't see through it? The little chick spat out a bubble and tilted its head, causing the ahog on its head to stand up. Then, with a grunt, it staggers its chubby little body over to Mayan's side. In the end, he slipped and fell flat on his face. When she raised her head, her big eyes were filled with tears of grievance. She reached out her little paws for a hug. Ningyu, she swallowed the last words. Mu Yan smiled as she picked up the little chick and let it perch on her shoulder. When she looked up, she saw Ningyu's clear eyes staring at her. She couldn't help but stare blankly. Ningyu said, I'm sorry. I don't know why, but I feel like I've known you for a long time. Although it's our first meeting, I feel a strange familiarity with you. After saying this, she sees Mu Yan staring at her. Ningyu suddenly feels a little embarrassed. Am I being too rude? Actually, I'm not usually this easygoing. Mu Yan suddenly hooks her lips into a smile. My name is Jun Mu Yan. However, he silently repeated it in his heart. Ningyu, was her surname Ning? Jun Mu Yan. What a good name. Ningyu excitedly pulled her to sit down. May I know which sect you are from? What do you usually like to do? Just now, I saw that your sword was sparkling and translucent. It was really beautiful. Are you also a sword cultivator? Heh, I am also a sword cultivator. It should be said that more than half of our family will choose to become sword cultivators. Mu Yan didn't expect that although this Ningyu looks valiant and heroic, she is actually a chatterbox. But she really wanted to find out some information, so she asked, the 6 great families of the floating island, Yi, and Wen, Ning, Situ, Beitang. Your surname is Ning, are you a disciple of the Ning family? Main family or branch family? Ningyu smiled, look at me, how can I be from the same family? I'm just the most inconspicuous member of the branch family. Just as Mu Yan is about to speak, the ground under her feet suddenly shakes violently. It's about to start eating. Someone at the side screamed in horror. It's over, it's over. It's finally getting ready to eat us. Almost as soon as he finished speaking, countless tiny tentacles stretched out from the flower wall. The tentacle had a small mouth filled with sharp teeth. Caught off guard, the Khan was hit in the face by a dozen or so tentacles, and he let out a shrill scream. In the blink of an eye, that face was badly mutilated. Ningyu did not panic. Instead, she laughed. "I've been waiting for you for a long time." He pulled out a silver flexible sword from his waist and infused it with spiritual energy. The flexible sword let out a buzzing sound and straightened. "Mu Yen, be careful." She reached out and pulled Mu Yen behind her to protect her. The software in her hand danced like a silver snake, and in the blink of an eye, those tentacles were completely cut off. Her movements are like floating clouds in flowing water, exceptionally beautiful. In between, she even has the leisure to explain to Mu Yen, when the 10,000 rotten flower closes, its flower sac's defensive power is incomparably strong. It's basically impossible to break through from the inside. But when it's about to bloom, its defense will become weak. Now is the time for us to go out. Mu Yen sees that she's doing it with ease, so she's not in a hurry to help. Instead, she unhurriedly collects the mucus inside the flower sac of the 10,000 rotten flower. Chapter 3493. On the other side, the brawny man screams and flees in a sorry state. At this time, he no longer has the arrogance of a moment ago and cries for his father and mother as he rushes towards the two. "Save me, let me hide behind you." However, Ningyu lifts her foot and kicks him, sending him flying several meters away and crashing into the flower wall. Immediately, he is entangled by more tentacles, and the flesh on his body is torn off piece by piece, revealing the ghastly white bones. Ningyu curls her lips. "I'm a neat freak. Everyone wants me to protect them. Do you think I'm a fool?" "Mu Yen, don't you think so?" Mu Yen can't help but curl up the corner of her lips and say, "Yes." This Ningyu is quite to her liking. Ningyu hears her concise and comprehensive answer and is also very happy. She wields the software in her hand more diligently. Finally, the fragrance of the flower sac is gradually replaced by a pungent stench. Ningyu shouts, "It's time." Holding a long sword, she soars into the air and fiercely slashes at the flower wall. There's a crackling sound, and a dazzling light, accompanied by fresh air, pours in from above. Ningyu grabs Mu Yan's hand and flies out of the flower sac. "Phew, we're finally out." Ningyu gives a big stretch and says with a happy expression, "I came to this chaotic heaven cave to fight, but I was unlucky enough to be trapped in the 10,000 rotten flowers for so many days. Ha, now I can finally have a good fight." Mu Yan also looks around and is surprised to find that this is actually a forest of magical plants. There are descriptions and images that she has seen in ancient books, such as oyster thorn, corpse bone vine, arrow charm. There are also some that she has never seen or heard of. Moreover, the size of each magical plant is incomparably huge. As if sensing the existence of other kinds of creatures, these magical plants immediately attack in the direction of the two people. Ningyu shakes the silver sword in her hand and says with a smile, "Mu Yen, can you deal with these magical plants? If you can't stand within the range of my sword light, I will protect you." Mu Yen shakes her head, "No need, I can protect myself." Saying that, she takes out the Tian Mo Chin and gently plays it. A protective cover immediately covers her whole body. The moment she sees these magical plants, Mu Yan's eyes brighten and her heart is boiling. These were all precious natural treasures. If he collected them, he would be able to make a huge breakthrough in both alchemy and poison refinement. Under the bright light, the girl's skin was as white as snow, and her features were so exquisite that she didn't look like a mortal. Her snow-white clothes were stained with dust, but she didn't seem disheveled at all. Instead, there was a kind of fragile beauty. Ningyu can't help but look worriedly at Mu Yan, who is approaching a arrow charm, forgetting even her own safety. It was rare for him to find such a beautiful and delicate woman pleasing to the eye. It would be a pity if they were killed by the demonic plants just like that. Then, Ningyu saw a scene that left her dumbfounded. Before she could react, the fragile girl in her heart had chopped the powerful magic plant, Charm of Arrow, into pieces. Because Arrow Charm already had a trace of living consciousness, it was still struggling after being cut off, trying to attack Mu Yan. Then, she was chopped into minced meat by the weak girl. The minced meat was then rolled together into a big ball, and then casually thrown into an incomparably shabby-looking basket. Mu Yan nods in satisfaction, then turns around and walks towards the next target. Chapter 3494. It took Ningyu a long time to pick up her fallen chin. She couldn't help but laugh out loud. Looking at Mu Yan, her eyes are full of admiration and appreciation. Truly worthy of being the person she fancies, she really has some skills. It's not easy for her to have a friend, so she must perform well and not let her down. Ningyu boosts her spirit, activates the soft sword, and is about to kill the magical plants. Suddenly, she sees a bloody figure flying out of the 10,000 rotten flowers bud from the corner of her eye, and pounces straight towards Mu Yan. Mu Yan, be careful. The one who pounces out is the toe-digging man who has been bitten by the 10,000 rotten flower beyond recognition. At this time, there is not a single piece of good flesh on his body, and his internal organs are riddled with holes. In the heaven-mixing cave, where danger lurked everywhere, he knew that there was no way he could survive. But the resentment and unwillingness in his heart makes him hold on to his last breath and climb out of the flour sack. It's all because of those two bitches that he fell into this situation. If they were willing to save him, he could still live. He will definitely live. So even if he dies, he must drag one of them to hell with him. Ningyu is too strong. Then drag this new girl to hell with her. Ningyu's warning is timely, but the strength of the toe-digging man is also extremely strong. With the idea of dying together, he doesn't hesitate to burn his spiritual power and divine soul. And Mu Yan is squatting down to collect the magical plants, as if she doesn't notice what's happening. Ningyu is burning with anxiety, but she can't rush to save him. So without thinking, she takes the bell hanging on her waist and throws it at the man. Jingle. The bell makes a crisp sound, and appears in front of Mu Yan in a flash. The burly man's head collided with the bell, producing a loud bang as he was sent flying several meters away. The bell shakes in the air, making a jingle sound, and falls to the ground. Mu Yan turns her head and sees the falling bell. She can't help but reach out to catch it. Ningyu's face changes when she sees this scene from afar, and she yells, "Mu Yan, you can't touch this bell." But her words are still a bit late. The bell has already fallen into Mu Yan's palm. Mu Yan's whole body trembles. She only feels a numbness spreading from her palm to her whole body. The bell in his palm also trembled slightly, but it soon calmed down. That strange feeling also disappeared without a trace. Ningyu almost pounced over and slapped the bell in her hand to the ground. Then he looks over in shock. "Mayan, are you all right?" Mayan blinks. "I'm fine." Ningyu stares blankly at the bell on the ground. She grabs Mu Yan's hand and turns it over and over several times. Sure enough, there were no signs of it being burned. His face was filled with astonishment. You're really all right." Chapter 3495. From the looks of it, it really seemed to be a very ordinary magic treasure. But Ningyu's expression is very strange. What secret is hidden in this blood-patterned bell? But soon, she puts these thoughts to the back of her mind. She heard that once you enter the heaven-mixing cave, it is equivalent to being in a small world. Even if they enter hand in hand at the same time, they may not necessarily appear in the same place. And to meet in different places is more difficult than ascending to heaven. Although Mu Yan is worried about the safety of Xiao Bao and her fellow apprentices, she can only restrain herself. The only thing she can do now is to find a way out as soon as possible. We can't go out yet. There is the breath of the Tian Mo Qin in this heaven-mixing cave. Hearing the abrupt voice in her ear, Mu Yan is already used to it. Qi Huang, you mean, there are materials to repair the Tian Mo Qin here? Where is it? Qi Huang, how would I know? Mu Yan's mouth twitches. Then how do you want me to find it? Just turn this shitty cave upside down and you'll find it. Mu Yan presses the throbbing veins on her forehead. Qi Huang, this brat, always gives her a difficult problem. He doesn't even say a word when she needs him. He's not as reliable as the little chick. She doesn't want him to give her big trouble every time he comes out. Now it seems that she can't rush to go out. Should he turn over the chaotic heaven cave abode? That's fine. At least that way, she can reunite with Xiao Bao and her fellow apprentices as soon as possible. Boom! After a loud noise, a fierce beast as big as a mountain comes crashing down. It almost submerges the small figure below. But soon, a person rushes out, picks up the little baby and rolls to the side. Xiao Bao, are you okay? Qin Jiu nervously looks at the delicate and beautiful baby in her arms, her eyes full of worry. Xiao Bao shakes his head. Second martial uncle, don't worry, Xiao Bao is fine. Qin Jiu breathes a sigh of relief, revealing a silly smile, and is about to speak. Suddenly, a yawning voice comes from the side. Finally finished. Then can we continue on our way? Li Weiran says as he slowly stands up. Xiao Bao coldly says, who is with you? You are not allowed to follow us anymore. Li Weiran said slowly, that won't do. It won't be easy to find Mu Yan in this chaotic heaven cave. The best shortcut is to stay with you. She may not look for anyone else, but she will definitely look for you. Little guy, right? Xiao Bao said angrily, so what if you find it? Mother won't care about you. Oh, is that so? Li Weiran smiled. So what if she ignores me? I just need to stick to her. Xiao Bao's little face flushed red with anger. Second martial uncle, let's go. Qin Jiu nodded, took a step forward, and immediately vanished on the spot like a hawk. The three of them were currently in a huge desert. Chapter 3496. Hearing Qin Jiu's praise, there was no arrogance or modesty. He just quietly took out the most important inner core of the beast and kept it in his storage space. Qin Jiu raised his head and saw Li Weiran standing not far away. Because of the long journey, the red silk covering Li Weiran's face had already flown away. Behind the red silk, a pair of deep and bone-chilling icy blue eyes appeared. The face of a young man that originally had some childishness. After the red silk had lost its concealment, it unexpectedly revealed a somewhat treacherous and frightening mature charm. Qin Jiu's thoughts had always been slow. But at this moment, he suddenly felt that the two pairs of ice-blue eyes were very similar. A thought popped up in his mind. So Li Weiran's eyes were also ice-blue. Just like Xiao Bao. Just like Teacher Mo, after taking the inner core, the three continued forward. But all they could see was endless yellow sand. Qin Jiu couldn't help but ask, Xiao Bao, is this the right way? They had already walked for a few days, but every day they saw the same scene. Were they really not going around in circles? Xiao Bao nodded. This way. How can you be sure this is the right direction? Li Weiran's question sounded in his ear. Xiao Bao ignored him but met Qin Zhou's curious gaze. His face was still taut as he said, intuition. Li Weiran. Hee, it's actually intuition. Xiao Bao heard the teasing in his tone and was so angry that his cheeks puffed up. But he didn't look at him and instead looked at Qin Zhou, second Uncle Master. Xiao Bao's intuition has always been very accurate. In the past, when Mother entered the forest to search for treasures, it was Xiao Bao who found them for her. Qin Zhou nodded without hesitation. Xiao Bao, you are right. Xiao Bao curled his lips and glared at Li Weiran. Suddenly, his little face changed. Second Uncle Master, put me down. Qin Zhou did as he was told. Xiao Bao immediately knelt on one knee and pressed his little hand on the yellow sand. Then his expression became more and more serious. Buzz buzz buzz. The Bixia sword at his waist let out a warning buzz. At this moment, even Qin Zhou felt that something was wrong. He quickly took out the 10,000-ton hammer and pulled Xiao Bao behind him. The sand dunes on the ground suddenly rolled violently like waves. From thousands of meters away, they formed a circle and headed straight for the two of them. Hua! Dozens of meters of sand and dust rose and fell, covering the sky. After the dust settled, a densely packed army of beasts appeared. It wasn't one, but 3 to 5 of them. There were thousands of them. There were all kinds of fierce beasts. There were reptiles, tigers, leopards, jackals, there were countless of them. The only similarity was that every single one of them was struggling. Their green eyes were greedily staring at the two of them. Qin Zhou's expression was grave. He raised his twin hammers and ruthlessly smashed away a poisonous scorpion. He shouted, Xiao Bao, run. How could Xiao Bao be willing to abandon the Qin wine and run away at this time? Without hesitation, he raised his sword and joined the battle. Under the ferocious roars of thousands of wild beasts, the small figure was like a small boat in the sea, about to be swallowed up at any time. These wild beast strengths were not much different from the 3 lizards they had just killed. But there were just too many of them. Even with Xiao Bao and Qin Zhou's shocking talents and dense spiritual energy, they were starting to be unable to hold on. They could barely lift their hands. The spiritual energy in their dantian was almost exhausted. Xiao Bao suddenly realized that the target of these beasts wasn't Qin Zhou, but him. Chapter 3497. You can search on Baidu for Enchantress of Healing Beauty, Heaven-Defying Baby's Black-Bellied Father. Search for the latest chapter. Immortal Spirit Body. In this world, any living being that cultivated would covet the immortal spiritual body. He was the one who attracted these beasts, and more of them came. He was the one who dragged second martial uncle into this. Thinking of this, Xiao Bao shouted, Bixia. The Bixia sword soared into the sky, carrying Xiao Bao in one direction. Qin Zhou shouted, Xiao Bao, come back. He chased after it. But he wasn't good at speed, how could he catch up to Bixia? In the blink of an eye, Xiao Bao's figure became smaller and smaller, and the beasts that surrounded him also changed direction and chased after Xiao Bao. In the vast desert, there was a strange scene. The flying sword flew in the sky like a meteor, and on it stood a child that looked no more than 5 or 6 years old. Below the little child was a densely packed army of ferocious beasts. They were roaring and howling non-stop as they tried to devour the little child into their stomachs. Xiao Bao's blue skin was getting paler, and he couldn't even sweat. His body wobbled a few times, and he almost fell off the sword. Little Master, how are you? Bishia's voice became faint and distant. Damn it, why can't I have a sword spirit of my own, if I can absorb the heaven and earth yuan qi, if I can control the Bishia sword? Roar. A roar came from below. Suddenly, a giant tongue stretched out in the sky, wrapped around Xiao Bao and dragged him down. Little master. The Bishia sword buzzed, it wanted to chase after him, but because it had lost its divine sense and spiritual energy, it fell to the ground powerlessly. Xiao Bao felt something wet and sticky was strangling him, dragging him down. He wanted to resist, but he was powerless. But the next moment, he heard the sound of a sharp knife cutting through flesh. Then, a sticky and stinky liquid sprayed on him. The restraint disappeared. Xiao Bao's body fell into a cold embrace. Some kind of cool energy was injected into his body, and his exhausted Dantian started to recover. Strange. Who injected energy into him? Was this spiritual energy? Immortal energy? Or divine energy? In the past, after forging the immortal body, he could no longer accept spiritual power from anyone other than his father and mother. Who had saved him? Xiao Bao struggled to open his eyes. When he saw the person in front of him clearly, his little face almost scrunched up. How could it be you? The one who saved him, hugged him and gave him spiritual energy was actually Li Weiran. This super invincible and annoying fellow. Li Weiran raised his eyebrows. Who else did you think it was? Xiao Bao was so angry that he struggled vigorously, trying to break free from his embrace. I don't need you to save me. Don't think that you can covet my mother just because you saved me. When my father comes, he'll definitely tear you into 1,000 pieces. Li Weiran smiled casually. Is that so? But are you sure that if I don't save you, can you wait until Di Mingju comes to save you? Xiao Bao sneered and broke free from his embrace. Stepping back onto the evil warding sword, he said, even if I die, I don't need you, before the last word, save, could leave his mouth. Suddenly, a loud rumble came from below. A huge crater had appeared on the yellow sand that was densely packed with vicious beasts. Countless vicious beasts screamed and fell down. Xiao Bao looked down in shock. But he was met with a pair of dark green eyes that were even larger than his head. Then, sharp teeth covered in blood and flesh slowly emerged from the yellow sand. And black skin full of ugly bumps and pustules. Xiao Bao shook his head. Second martial uncle, don't worry. I'm fine. He couldn't help but look at Li Weiran with a complicated expression. He saved me. Only then did Qin Jiu realize that there was a small mountain of corpses not far away. He didn't know what kind of monster it was, but it was already dead. Half of the body was buried in the sand and the other half was exposed. But even if it was only half, it was enough to make people despair. If Li Weiran didn't save him, then Xiao Bao, thinking of that terrifying outcome, Qin Jiu's heart palpitated. He looked at Li Weiran with a face full of gratitude and stammered, Thank you for saving Xiao Bao. But without him, she might not have survived at all. Mother will also be very sad. Xiao Bao clenched his fists. He thought to himself, Mother said that a real man should repay kindness with kindness and revenge with hatred. This hateful person had saved him so many times. No matter what, he had to be grateful and think of a way to repay him in the future. But it's impossible for his mother to give it to him. Mother is Xiao Bao and father. After thinking this through, Xiao Bao said, I'll remember your kindness of saving me, and I'll definitely repay you in the future. And your hand, Wait until you see Mother, she will definitely be able to cure it. Don't worry. Chapter 3500. After saying that, Little Bao realized that Li Weiran was looking at him as if he was an idiot. His thin lips were already slightly curled up. Aren't you talking nonsense? Naturally, I kept this hand for Mu Yan's treatment. I saved her precious son twice, she should think about how to repay me. Or, do you think that I will not repay your kindness? Xiao Bao was so angry that his little face turned red. He wished that he could pull out the evil warding sword and stab this guy a few times. Bastard! 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 He was really stupid to worry about this bad guy, and he even felt guilty. He should have just let the monster eat him. Not even dregs were left. Xiao Bao held the evil warding sword and slashed the desolate poisonous toad again and again to vent his anger. It was as if he was chopping down Li Weiran. Not far away, Li Weiran couldn't help but smile when he saw that the little fellow's face was 70% similar to Mu Yan's, but he still had that childish look on his face. However, when this trace of a smile came into contact with Xiao Bao's eyes, it slowly became sinister and cold. Xiao Bao couldn't help but frown after taking out the poison sac and inner elixir of the desolate poisonous toad. This desolate poisonous toad was too smelly. Even though he was holding his breath, it was still nauseating. Moreover, the stench was poisonous and had already spread in all directions. Even Qin Zhou's face had turned red due to holding her breath for a long time. Her skin had also developed many small red rashes due to contact with the poison. And this is because Qin Zhou has already taken the antidote given by Mayan. If this poisonous gas were to spread out, would even his mother and the other martial uncles be affected? Xiao Bao thought about it and asked the fat rabbit, "Bunny, can you eat it?" The fat rabbit immediately shook its head like a rattle. Not eating, not eating, not eating. It would rather die than eat such a smelly thing. What if its little master didn't like it after eating it and it started to have bad breath? Xiao Bao was at his wit's end. Li Weiran slowly walked forward, took out a bottle, and poured out a drop of water. That drop of water was as black as ink and landed on the corpse of the desolate poisonous toad. They immediately transformed into tens of thousands of little black bugs. These bugs quickly crawled into the wounds of the toad. It gnawed all the way and crawled out from another wound. In the blink of an eye, the desolate poisonous toad, which was bigger than a mountain, was completely eaten. Xiao Bao's scalp went numb as he looked at the black water droplets of insects that had gathered together again. This little bug is very similar to the golden silkworm goo that Mu Yan had refined. But it was far more powerful than the golden silkworm goo. This was because the golden silkworm goo was unable to resist the poison produced by the desolate poisonous toad. He saw Xiao Bao's big eyes staring at the porcelain bottle in his hand. Li Weiran smirked and stuffed the porcelain bottle into his arms. Black witch goo. If you like it, I'll give it to you. Xiao Bao blinked. Who said he liked her? However, the black witchcraft goo seemed to be very powerful. Most importantly, the fat rabbit in the space was already howling excitedly. It seemed that the black witchcraft goo was a delicious delicacy to it, and Xiao Bao had to take it. Xiao Bao blushed and put the porcelain bottle into the space of the Bixia sword. He said in a voice as quiet as a mosquito, "Thank you. You don't have to thank me too early." Li Weiran said with a smile that wasn't a smile, "I have to take back what I gave away." Xiao Bao, a scoundrel is indeed a scoundrel. He hated it the most. Chapter 3501. You can search on Baidu for The Enchantress of the City, heaven-defying baby's black-bellied father, search for the latest chapter. Ha! That is, what the place? Qin Zhou's puzzled voice comes, interrupting Xiao Bao's panting with anger. The huge corpse of the desolate poisonous toad disappears. Under the yellow sand that originally buried it, there is a large piece of transparent glass. Looking down from above, you can see that there is a splendid palace inside. In the center of the palace is a place like an altar. There is a flame burning above it. Behind the flame, there are 3 glittering words, Wuxiang Palace. Li Weiran reveals a look of realization. So this is the ruins of Wuxiang Palace. No wonder there are such high-level beasts guarding it. Wuxiang Palace. Xiao Bao blinks. He remembers that he heard his mother mention it before. Little brother Huang Huang came out from Wuxiang Palace with his mother. Li Weiran looks at Xiao Bao. Little guy, you want to become stronger. Xiao Bao is startled, then he clenches his fist and nods. Li Weiran's brows slightly raise, and he carelessly says, you should become a little stronger, so as not to drag mine down. Xiao Bao. He is so angry that he becomes a pufferfish. Li Weiran doesn't pay attention to him. He raises his hand, and a black light falls on the top of the glass. Soon, there is a hole in the glass that even the poison emperor toad couldn't break. Li Weiran doesn't wait for Xiao Bao and Qin Zhou to react, and pushes them down with 2 palms. The moment Xiao Bao and Qin Zhou enter Wuxiang Palace, the hole in the glass immediately disappears. The yellow sand on both sides seems to have a life of its own, burying the top of the glass. Li Weiran looks at the desert that doesn't have any traces left behind, and his mouth hooks up into a brilliant arc. If I can survive, I will certainly become stronger. Mayan will be very happy at that time, right? If I can't survive, then don't blame me, the weak are not qualified to survive. 10,000 heavenly beasts return to the sect, the mountains and rivers float in the sky. I am willing to offer my insignificant body as a sacrifice to the heavens. My soul will fall into the forgetting river, and I will have no regrets in this life. Just to give my son a ladder to the heavens. Father. The cold wind blew on his body. Luo Yu was so cold that her entire body was trembling. She only felt that along with the sound of the wind, there seemed to be a distant and indistinct voice ringing in her ears. I'll take you to the floating island. Chu Shi's life will be with you. From now on, I no longer have a father. In this world, only you are my most important family. The beast soul has been destroyed, Shuejin's life has come to an end. We can never meet again. From then on, my soul fell into the river of forgetfulness, my heart was torn and my intestines were broken. I only wish to be possessed by the filthy devil and be doomed eternally. Kill. Luo Yu opened her eyes abruptly, gasping for air. Cold sweat dripped from his forehead, but it was blown dry by the cold wind before it could fall. He couldn't help but shiver as he looked around. All he could see was darkness. The tip of his nose was filled with traces of mud and a rotten smell. After a while, Luo Yu could finally see clearly. This was actually a cave. The cave was covered with moss and plants adapted to the damp and dark environment. He stood up and walked around the cave, but did not find anything. There were no totems, nor were there any mechanisms or treasures. There was only one wall, which had hundreds of sword scars. There was no spiritual power attached to these sword scars. But for some reason, he could feel the monstrous hatred and pain in the heart of the person who made these sword scars. Who carved these sword scars? Was it the owner of the voice he heard in his sleep? Chapter 3502. Luo Yu was puzzled for a while, but then threw all this to the back of his mind. The voices ringing in his ears were very indistinct and distant. In his dream, listening to those voices, he felt as if his heart was being squeezed. He could feel the sorrow, despair, and anger that arose from the depths of his soul. But when he woke up, this feeling gradually faded. He even forgot most of the words he had heard. He searched around the cave again, and confirmed that there were no treasures or mechanisms inside. Luo Yu could only leave in disappointment. However, as soon as he left the cave, he was so scared that his soul almost left his body. Outside the cave was actually a large swamp. Outside the swamp, giant crocodiles were opening their bloody mouths, waiting for the arrival of food. Every crocodile's strength was above the mountain opening tier. If he had stepped out of the cave without feeling anything, he would definitely have become a meal for these crocodiles. Luo Yu patted his chest with lingering fear. Then he could not help but feel depressed. With these crocodiles here, how could he leave the cave? The crocodiles were extremely close to the cave. If he went out, he would not be able to fly into the sky, and both his legs would be bitten off. If it was one or two, he could still deal with it. But there were over 100 of them. Luo Yu returned to the cave gloomily. He racked his brains, but could not find a solution. He could not help but walk in front of those sword marks, and lightly touched them. Because one of the sword marks had sharp edges, his finger was accidentally cut. Fresh blood seeped out from his fingertip, and spread on the sword mark. The next moment, Luo Yu felt himself being swallowed into a ball of light. He faintly heard an old voice that seemed both familiar and strange. Of the same origin, you are not of a different race. Please enter Wushang Palace to accept the test and gift. I only hope that Wushang's soul will forever remain in this world unextinguished. As he walked out of the forest with the formation plate in his hand, Ling Yusheng let out a long sigh of relief. Fortunately, little junior sister had left him a random transportation formation, otherwise he would have been trapped in this damned place. However, as soon as he walked out of the forest, a wide plain appeared in front of him, and the plain was filled with all kinds of beautiful flowers. However, in front of him, there was actually a dense and endless forest. Ling Yusheng felt a headache coming on. His speed was very fast. However, this forest was too strange. No matter how fast he was, even if he used the absolute space domain, he would eventually return to his original position. Fortunately, he remembered the array disc his junior sister had given him. Only then did he manage to walk out of the forest with great effort. Who would have thought that apart from this valley, there would be another dense forest in front of them? If he wanted to walk out of this place, who knew how long it would take? Ling Yusheng let out a long sigh, but there was nothing he could do. He slowly stepped forward, but his figure had already traveled dozens of meters into the valley. Seeing the forest from afar, Ling Yusheng had thought that this valley wasn't that big. Who would have thought that even with his speed, after walking for a full hour, he was only halfway there? This valley seemed a little strange. Ling Yusheng was frowning in thought. Suddenly, a loud noise came with the wind. You guys stay here. Su Su will go down with me. What kind of joke is this? I've already said that I would definitely protect Su Su. I'll definitely go down with Su Su. Su Su, only I can protect you and take care of you here. These uncouth people, how would they know how to make you feel comfortable? Just let me go down with you, okay? Chapter 3503. Bastards, how dare you snatch Su Su from me? Believe it or not, I'll kill you. With your mediocre skills, it's hard to say who will be the one to kill who. Ling Yusheng's footsteps stopped unconsciously. He turned his head and looked in the direction of the voice. There were many undulating hills in this valley. On the slopes of some hills, there were caves of various sizes, which seemed to have been left by some wild beasts. Ling Yuxing had noticed it before, but he didn't take it to heart. Looking over now, he found that the quarreling people were surrounding a cave. They were 3 tall, boorish men and a tall, slender woman dressed in a cotton dress with a braided hairpin. The quarreling 3 men were the ones. The tall woman was holding a silk handkerchief, wiping her tears while sobbing, "Don't quarrel over Su Su. Su Su doesn't deserve this." Hearing this delicate and timid voice, Ling Yuxing shuddered. Ling Yuxing shuddered, and then the words "Su Su" flashed across his mind, and his eyes revealed a look of horror. He turned around and ran without thinking. However, the moment he stopped to check, the woman in front of him had already raised her head and met his eyes. "Husband!" A voice that shook the heavens and made ghosts and gods weep rang out. It was a mournful and melancholic cry. Ling Yuxing felt his scalp go numb. He activated the absolute space field to the extreme and took a step forward. However, with his speed that could easily kill a mountain opening state expert, he had only taken a few steps when he bumped into someone. "Hoo, husband, you've made it hard for me to find you. You heartless person, do you know how sad Su Su is that she can't see you?" The blue veins on Ling Yuxing's forehead bulged, and he grabbed her arm and shook her off. "Yan Jishu, that's enough." Being yelled at by him, the woman in front of him burst into tears, crying her heart out. However, she was crying like a pear blossom in the rain, which made people feel sorry for her. It made people want to put all the best things in the world in front of her. "Who are you? How dare you make Su Su cry? I think you're tired of living. Su Su, why do you still care about such a husband? Why don't you let me kill him? You can follow me in the future. I won't let you suffer even the slightest bit." It was unknown when the 3 burly men had rushed over, but they were currently surrounding the crying woman and comforting her. However, when facing Ling Yuxing, he was fierce and his eyes were filled with killing intent. A few of them had already unsheathed their long sabers, looking as if they were going to tear Ling Yuxing into pieces. "No, I can't. You must not harm my husband." Yan Jishu strode in front of Ling Yuxing and said with a trembling voice, "I love my husband, and it will never change in this lifetime. If you kill my husband, Su Su won't be able to live alone. Su Su, move aside." What's so good about these gigolos? Open your eyes and take a look. We're the ones you can entrust your life to. Third bro, go pull Su Su away. Let me destroy this pretty boy's face. Let's see if Su Su is still reluctant to part with him. Yan Jishu said, "No, you can't." Sob, 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 sob. "Husband, I'll block them. Quickly run." Ling Yuxing, Su Su, sorry for the offense. In the future, big brothers will definitely dote on you. Ugh. The man slowly lowered his head in disbelief and looked at his abdomen. There was a slender dagger stuck there. All these years, he had never been torn apart by anyone. Who knew that Ling Yuxing would see through his disguise at first glance because he had disguised himself as a man before. Since then, Yan Jishu had been pestering Ling Yuxing. Ling Yuxing was the one and only possessor of the absolute space domain. His speed was one of the fastest on the floating island. However, in the face of Yan Jishu, he had no way to escape. More often than not, he thought he had escaped. In the blink of an eye, this woman would come out like a haunting ghost. He had beaten him up, poisoned him by his junior sister, and even used the random teleportation formation disc. Chapter 3505. However, he couldn't escape from Yan Jishu's palm no matter what. During this period, Ling Yuxing's strength had even improved by leaps and bounds because of his several battles with Yan Jishu. Even his absolute space domain had advanced to the middle of the third level. However, Yan Jishu's strength was like a bottomless pit. Every time he fought with him, it was like he was playing with him, and he didn't even use 10% of his strength. In the end, Ling Yuxing was freed because Yan Jishu had left for some reason. Ling Yuxing's scalp went numb at the thought of this nightmarish experience. He thought he would never see this person again in his life. Who knew? Who knew that enemies would meet on a narrow road in the Heaven Chaos Cave abode? Ling Yuxing took a deep breath. Why are you here? I'm here to reunite with little Xingxing. Ling Yuxing turned around and left. Oh, little Xingxing, don't be so stingy. I'm just joking with you. I'm here to get a treasure in the Heaven Chaos Cave abode. Ling Yuxing had just taken a few steps when a shadow suddenly appeared in front of him. He stopped and wanted to step back, but his chin was already grabbed by a cold and slender hand. The other party was clearly doing a domineering action, but the voice that came out of his mouth was indistinguishable, and it was so coquettish that it made one's scalp tingle. Sob, little Xingxing, the treasure is in that cave, but it's so dark. I'm scared. Can you go in with me? Ling Yuxing wanted to retreat with a cold face, but he found that he couldn't break free from this person's shackles. He said coldly, no. Yan Jishu, let go. No way. If I let go, little Xingxing, you'll run away. Yan Jishu looked like he was about to cry. He held the silk handkerchief and gently tapped Ling Yuxing's chest. When she looked up, her eyes were filled with infinite affection. She said softly, little Xingxing, I've never met a man who suits my taste as much as you in my life. I want to entrust the rest of my life to you. Why don't you follow me? Then, Yan Jishu let go and suddenly approached Ling Yuxing. She leaned close to his ear and said in a low voice, from the first time I saw Xiao Xingxing, I knew that we were kindred spirits. It's been a long time since I've seen someone who could move my heart this much. You won't regret being with me. Ling Yuxing moved his feet and retreated 10 meters away. His usually handsome and gentle face was expressionless as he stared coldly at the beautiful woman in front of him. He said without hesitation, I refuse. Sob, 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 why? Don't tell me I'm not beautiful and good enough. You're so annoying. Not only do I have a beautiful and enchanting body, I also have the skills to satisfy you. The veins on Ling Yuxing's forehead throbbed violently. Or are you worried about other people's opinions? Little Xingxing, don't worry. If anyone dares to gossip about us, maybe you'll kill their entire family. Ling Yuxing took a deep breath and said indifferently, neither. Because I have a lover. Yan Jishu stopped wiping his tears. Men. A gentle smile appeared in Ling Yuxing's eyes. Yes, men. Aren't you afraid that the world won't tolerate you being with a man? Ling Yuxing's expression was calm and without the slightest ripple. Even if there are thousands of obstacles and mountains and oceans separating us, they can't stop me from being with him. Besides, it's just the words of a mortal. Chapter 3506. You can search on Baidu for Enchantress of the City, Heaven Defying Baby's Black-Bellied Father. Search for the latest chapter. Yan Jishu looked at him deeply, his eyes like a bottomless abyss. However, in the blink of an eye, he started crying again, little Xingxing, you're so ruthless. I had my heart set on the moon, but the moon shines on the ditch. How can I not compare to that stinky man? He wiped his tears and sobbed, I know my husband's heart is like iron and can't be changed. Now, I only hope to leave another beautiful memory with little Xingxing. Little Xingxing, you won't even agree to such a small request, will you? Ling Yuxing said expressionlessly, you can't enter that cave alone. You need 2 people. That's why you asked those people to go down with you. Yan Jishu glared at him and said, annoying. How can these stinky men compare to you, little Xingxing? Ling Yuxing ignored him and arrived in front of the cave. The cave extended diagonally downwards, and it was bottomless. Ling Yuxing looked at Yan Jishu and asked, how do I get in? Yan Jishu said timidly, I don't know either. There's a bottomless abyss in front of this cave. I once tried to jump down alone, but I heard a voice saying that I wasn't the fated one. If I took another step forward, I would be killed. I was so scared that I could only retreat. Ling Yuxing sneered, so you want to find a few more scapegoats? You're so annoying. How can little Xingxing say that? My heart is very pure and kind, okay? Yan Jishu looked like he had suffered a huge blow. His face was pale and he looked like he was on the verge of collapse. If it were anyone else, they would definitely be filled with tenderness and want to hug her in their arms to comfort her. However, Ling Yuxing ignored it completely. He stepped into the cave and jumped down before Yan Jishu could react. Ah! Yan Jishu was dazed. You jumped down just like that. Then, he covered his face with his slender hands and chuckled. Little Xingxing, I really like you more and more. As soon as he said that, Yan Jishu disappeared. Ling Yuxing, who had jumped into the cave, heard a coarse and ancient voice that seemed to come from the distant sky. For thousands of lifetimes, fate will rise and fall. You are not from a foreign race. Please enter Wushang Palace to accept the test and gift. I only hope that Wushang's soul will remain in this world forever. A flame seemed to shoot up from the ground and engulfed Ling Yuxing. Then, he completely lost consciousness. Yumo, the soup is ready. Come and drink some. Hearing the call from behind her, Ling Yumo retracted her gaze and frowned suspiciously. She didn't know why, but from the moment she entered the heaven-mixing cave, she always felt that a pair of eyes was secretly staring at her. Her divine sense was quite sharp. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't find anything. Could it be that it was just an illusion? Yumo. The one who called out to her was a young man with thick eyebrows, big eyes, and fair skin. He was holding a bowl of steaming meat soup in his hand. Seeing Ling Yumo looking over, he blushed and handed over the soup in his hand with an expectant look on his face. This person's name was Lu Juanjia, the great-grandson of Lu Qinyuan, the leader of the Life Alliance, one of the 3 alliances of the floating island. When Ling Yumo first entered the floating island, she had accidentally saved Lu Juanjia once. But at that time, Ling Yumo didn't know Lu Juanjia's true identity, so she didn't take it to heart. However, he didn't expect that he would run into Lu Juanjia again after entering the heaven-mixing cave. Chapter 3507. The last time Lu Juanjia was in trouble, it was because he believed in bandits and was almost poisoned to death. This time, when he entered the chaotic heaven cave, he was tricked again and pushed into the 9-tailed dragon sunflower bush. After listening to Lu Juanjia's story, Ling Yumo was speechless. How could there be such a silly and sweet Lu Juanjia in the world? What a waste of his identity as the great-grandson of the Life Alliance master. Hearing Ling Yumo's complaints, Lu Juanjia smiled foolishly, without any resentment or remorse. But I think it's good now. If I hadn't been tricked by them, I wouldn't have entered the chaotic heaven cave, and I wouldn't have been able to reunite with Yumo. Ling Yumo secretly shook her head. All right. It seemed that this silly and sweet person was hopeless. He took a sip of the hot soup. It was fragrant and the meat was soft and tender. It melted in his mouth. Ling Yuma couldn't help but praise, "The meat soup you cooked tastes really good." Although it was not as good as Xiaowu's, it was really good compared to ordinary people. Lu Juanjia's eyes lit up when he heard that. His fair cheeks blushed and he stammered, "Yuma, it's good that you like it. I can cook for you every day." Ling Yuma raised her head and saw that the man opposite her had his head lowered, his face full of shyness and joy. His eyelashes fluttered, and his cheek seemed to be stained with peach blossoms. Ling Yuma stared blankly, and before she knew it, another face appeared in front of her. His eyes were as clear as water. He blushed easily. He was obviously a little monk, but he kept saying Amitabha and female benefactor like an old man. However, when that person smiled, he was as crystal clear as a child, as if he could gather the cleanest and purest light in the world on his body. Little by little, her heartstrings were teased, and she unknowingly fell in love. Unknowingly, her feet were deep in the mud. Lu Juanjia felt that the opposite person's eyes were on him. His heart was beating wildly, and his face was as red as a cooked prawn. Why was Yuma staring at him? Did she have a good impression of him? When Lu Juanjia thought of this, he felt overjoyed. Suppressing her shyness, she looked up and stammered, "Yuma, after we get out of the heaven-mixing cave this time, you come back to the Life Alliance with me, okay? I'll introduce you to my great-grandfather." Ling Yuma came back to her senses and heard his words clearly. She could not help but ask suspiciously, "Why do you want to introduce him to your great-grandfather? I don't even know him." Lu Juanjia's face turned even redder. Her eyes were sparkling and filled with anticipation. I want to tell grandfather that I want to marry." Before he could finish, Ling Yuma's expression suddenly changed. He abruptly threw away the bowl in his hand, grabbed Lu Juanjia's collar, and flew into the sky. In the next moment, a ferocious beast leaped out of the water and pounced toward the island where the two of them were originally. Yes, Ling Yuma and Lu Juanjia were currently on a boundless ocean. However, this sea was a little different from the sea in reality. Every so often, there would be a small island floating on the surface of the water. Some of these islands were planted with trees, while others were bare like reefs. They could only be used as a foothold. Fortunately, there were these small islands, so Ling Yuma and Lu Juanjia could move forward. Otherwise, they would definitely exhaust their spiritual power and die on this sea. However, there were very fierce and huge sea beasts in the sea that would often attack the two of them who were resting on the island. For example, at this moment, there was a huge black tortoise that was staring at Ling Yuma and Lu Juanjia with bloodthirsty and fierce eyes. Chapter 3508. This black tortoise's cultivation was much higher than theirs. It could already stand shoulder to shoulder with sea-splitting realm cultivators. The scariest thing was that its body was extremely huge. When it came out of the water, it was even bigger than the small island. Its long neck stretched out and bit the place where the two of them were just a moment ago. With a cracking sound, the small island actually split from the middle. Lu Juanjia was carried by Ling Yuma's shoulder in the air. Seeing this scene, his face turned pale. If it wasn't for Ling Yuma's vigilance, they would have been bitten into pieces like the rocks on the small island. "Yuma, thank you. If it wasn't for..." "Shoo!" Silence. Ling Yuma's expression was cold as she shouted. At the same time, she released her divine sense without holding back. On the red lotus soul-stealing saber in her hand, the lotus runes flickered with a dazzling light, faintly discernible. The huge black tortoise below seemed to realize that its prey had escaped. At this moment, it angrily raised its head and stared at the two with bloodthirsty eyes. Suddenly, the black tortoise's head stretched out. Ah! Lu Juanjia only felt a chill on his feet and screamed in fright. Fortunately, Leng Yuma noticed that something was wrong and quickly flew up several feet, narrowly avoiding the black tortoise's attack. However, Lu Juanjia's shoes fell into the sea. A cold tide came from the soles of his feet, almost scaring Lu Juanjia out of his wits. Leng Yuma also had lingering fears. She didn't expect the black tortoise's head to be so high. Suddenly, her mind was filled with an extremely uneasy premonition. Her divine sense clearly didn't detect anything, but Leng Yuma felt that something was wrong. Without hesitation, she activated all the spiritual power in her body and poured it into the red lotus soul-stealing saber. Bang! The blade struck the void, but a huge rebounding force came from it. Leng Yuma flew back dozens of meters. Her internal organs were overturned, and she almost spat out blood. At the place where the saber struck, a fierce beast that looked like a flood dragon slowly appeared. It was staring greedily at the two with a pair of green eyes. This flood dragon's skin was silver blue. Following the movement of its long tail, its figure slowly disappeared. It was not just a disappearance of sight, but also a disappearance of hearing and spiritual sense that could not be detected. Leng Yuma didn't even have time to wipe the blood from the corner of her mouth before she once again raised the red lotus soul-stealing blade. But her heart sank little by little. This flood dragon was stronger than Black Tortoise. It was so strong that she could not sense its real strength. When the Black Tortoise saw the flood dragon, it was so scared that it dived into the sea and didn't dare to come out again. Leng Yuma instinctively felt that she would die here. Lu Juanjia said with a trembling voice, Will we die here? Yuma, it's all my fault. Throw me into the sea and run away. Shut up. Leng Yuma roared and slashed with the long saber in her hand. The blazing flames drew a beautiful arc in the air. However, it didn't hit. She couldn't find any trace of the flood dragon. A cold and damp aura, mixed with a pungent fishy smell, slowly surrounded the two of them. When Leng Yuma finally sensed the location of the flood dragon, it was the moment when he opened his bloody mouth, revealing his sharp teeth and greedy eyes. Even Leng Yuma's eyes showed despair. But it was only for a moment. That bit of weakness was replaced by a determination without regret. She released Lu Juanjia's hand without hesitation and let him fall into the sea. Chapter 3509. The red flame turned into a lotus, and the figure of the woman in red merged with the long saber. Leng Yuma's eyes were filled with determination. Since there was no way out, she had to fight with her life on the line. Even if there were no bones left, at least she did not cower. The flood dragon slowly revealed its body that covered the sky. It looked at the lowly human who dared to resist and revealed a mocking expression. Its huge claws stretched out, and in an instant, it could grab the weak body and crush it into meat paste. It liked to listen to the mournful wails of its prey in its claws and mouth. However, just as the flood dragon's claws were about to stretch out, its body suddenly froze. Its huge eyeballs moved stiffly. Finally, it landed in front of Leng Yuma. A little monk wearing a golden-red kasaya had appeared there. A pair of pitch-black, bottomless eyes was quietly looking at it. The golden alms bowl in his hand emitted a faint light. The flood dragon's body instinctively trembled. It had a fear of the golden alms bowl from the depths of its soul. Amitabha, the little monk softly said. A cinnabar dot quietly appeared between his eyebrows. It made the originally pure, and holy face inexplicably have a bit of evil aura that made people tremble. The deep sonorous voice of the Buddhist Dharma flowed out from his opened and closed lips. A red light shot out from the golden alms bowl and directly pierced the flood dragon's eyebrows. A mournful scream resounded through the sky. The seawater below violently surged, setting off raging waves. The huge beasts under the sea desperately hid in the depths of the sea. They were as quiet as cicadas in winter, shivering in fear. Finally, the body of the screaming dragon disappeared, and there was a small silver-blue snake in the golden alms bowl of the little monk. However, it only lasted for a moment before it disappeared into the golden alms bowl. The little monk slowly turned around and looked at the pale girl with bloodstains at the corner of her mouth. He slightly lowered his head and said, "Amitabha, Benefactor Lang, are you all right?" Before he could finish his sentence, he saw the body of the person in front of him sway slightly. She directly fell into the sea. "Yuma." The little monk's expression changed. Without thinking, he rushed over and hugged her. "Are you badly injured?" Jing Yuan did not realize that his voice was trembling in panic. However, as soon as he said that, he realized that something was wrong. The girl in his arms looked at him with a faint smile. Although he was indeed injured, it wasn't to the point where he couldn't even fly. "Little monk, when did you start following me in secret?" Jing Yuan's face instantly turned red. After a long while, he stammered, "Little monk, I'm not." Halfway through his sentence, he realized that he was still hugging Lang Yuma. Their bodies were so close to each other. He was so close that he could clearly feel her warmth. There was also the feeling of his fingertips hugging her tightly. Even if they were separated by clothes, it was impossible to ignore. Jing Yuan hurriedly tried to loosen his grip. I was rude." Unexpectedly, Lang Yuma grabbed his clothes and said weakly, "My spiritual power has been exhausted. Are you going to throw me into the sea if you let go of me?" Jing Yuan, who was about to let go, suddenly tightened his grip. This time, it was too tight. It was so tight that it seemed like it wanted to directly knead people into its bones and blood. Lang Yuma could not help but groan. Jing Yuan's face, which was already red, seemed to be burning. At the same time, he could not suppress his rapid heartbeat and heavy breathing. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.